Today I'm chatting with Her Excellency Serey Chea, sweet-looking lady, runs Cambodia's central bank, leading Asia's first digital currency bakong, been to some of the most prestigious universities around the world, a single parent, an avid artist, and a passionate traveler. She's truly lived many lives in one. I am your host, Polin. Welcome to TAW Real Chats, where life's insights are shared. Thank you so much for joining me today, Serey.
Thank you for having me.
Serey, you're the Director General of Cambodia's National Bank. People in Asia typically assume women don't really lead. What would you say is your recipe for rising through the ranks into this leadership position?
Well, I mean, there's no substitute for blood and sweat, but it's very interesting that you ask me this question because my father is actually the governor of the central bank where I'm working. And there was a news article in Singapore asked me about nepotism. And I rightly responded, well, I'm part of nepotism, right? And if I am benefiting just because of these positions, just because of my father, you wouldn't be here interviewing me about something so serious. At that time, it was about microfinancing, etc. And so I said, sometimes in Asia, I mean, the Western sort of values tend to be very idealistic, right? And I think it's depending on the context. It's not bad. It's ideal. But depending on the context, you want to make use. Cambodia is a post-war country, right? And so what you want to do is to make use of whatever available. And whether I'm the daughter of my father or the daughter of the governor, if I can do the job, then why not? And I think because I am the daughter, I am much more pressured to perform and to show that I actually deserve that role. And I am here where I am, not because of my father, but because I'm able to demonstrate, my capability to the institutions, to the country, and to the world, what I can do. So I think for me it was very it was a very interesting journey, definitely, but it's a lot of hard work. And as I said, there's no substitute to blood and sweat. You have to work really hard to be where you are, particularly if you're women and you're young. There's always a lot of prejudice behind. And if all the more you're also the daughter of the head of the institution you work for, it's become even worse.
So it's hard for any woman, I think, to rise up to that position. But being the daughter of the governor at the central bank, it just means life just got 5 times harder for you. And I can't imagine that pressure that you went through when you've got eyes left, right, center, I imagine, sort of watching you, your every step. But you've definitely demonstrated, I think, in your career and also in your stunning academic accomplishments, if I must say. You've been to some of the world's most prestigious universities, like I mentioned before. I mean, you've been to Wellington in New Zealand, you've been to Harvard, Oxford, University of Sydney, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, and most recently a Ph.D. in the University of Adelaide. For some of us, it's hard enough to go make it into one of them, to have gone through all of these. Which was your favorite experience?
So before Wellington in New Zealand, I was actually in France. And so I went to my middle school and high school in France. I think one of the places that I sort of have a very keen memory of was probably France, and then followed by New Zealand. And understandably, because it was a time when I was single, and the only thing that I had to worry about was to pass my exam, or at least wake up on time to attend the lectures. That was the only things. And later on, when I undertook my master degree and my PhD degree, it was when I took my master degree, it was when I was pregnant with my second son. And I was about 8 months pregnant, and I had to sit through 2.5-hour exam. That was really difficult because the baby keep kicking. And that doesn't, and I don't even want to count, the times that I spent to do my assignment. before that, and with the morning sickness and the baby moving around. But I really wanted to show that things can be done, and I think it's kind of what we say. It's kind of the word. It's masochist, where you sort of put pressure on yourself just for showing others that you can do it, which actually you don't really have to. But at that time, because I was my father's daughter, I think I wanted to show that I work harder than others.
Right.
And then when I did my PhD, really I didn't have to, but I went to a conference, and it was the Australian Award Conference, and they're trying to recruit women to do higher degree. And then I made a speech, and when I came off the stage, a woman came to me and asked, I want to do this master degree, but my parents don't want me to move to Australia, and my husband is not very supportive, and I have a kid, and so and so, and it sounded so complicated. And I was listening to her, and I'm like, wow, how can she manage? And then I sort of wanted to prove that it can be done, despite all this. And
Wow.
so purely out of curiosities and, wanted to prove myself something, I embarked on a PhD degree. And it really, I had a scholarship, so I was lucky. And I thought I was going to give up because it was too difficult handling work and families, etc. But I kept on, and it's so rewarding, and I'm so grateful to my supervisor, to the university, for keeping up with me. And how I was very lazy, so my supervisor keep reminding me, hey, it's time. So yeah, in the end, it's about hard work, and commitment.
Right. Wow, what an incredible story. I think it sounds like, you have a drive within you to constantly achieve and to, I suppose, prove the impossible is possible,
Yeah,
almost.
maybe I'm a bit hyper in that sense. I
Very, very
can't be
determined lady, isn't it?
I don't know, but yeah, I think I'm quite hyper, where I always try to find something to do. Can't stay still.
Right. You've mentioned, you're doing all this partly also just to really quieten down those critics and let them know that you are here because of who you are, so being Sarai, not because you're the daughter of the governor or daughter of your father, right? Is that the biggest misconception that people seem to have about you, or is there another bigger misconception that you think people might
Well,
have?
there's that. I think there's that, and over time, people just they put it aside, and they realize that I'm not here because I'm the daughter of my father. But the fact that you're a woman, the fact that you're young, and you're leading a team of male who are probably older than you, is something else that, I mean, in our part of the world is quite difficult to accept, right? So, and I just I don't really take it very seriously. I mean, I can walk into a meeting room, and the guests whom requested to meet me don't haven't seen me before, and I immediately stand up and go and greet my staff, and
Who's
thought that
male?
my male staff, and thought that he, is Serey Chea. And I mean, I could be upset and offended, but I realize, after time, but this is actually funny. You have to,
Laugh it
try
off.
to laugh it off, and not take it too seriously. And it's actually helped a lot to overcome some of these misconceptions, because you can't take everything too seriously. So yeah.
That's brilliant advice there. You mentioned that you're leading a team of males, I mean men, right? And many times older than you are. I think for some of our listeners who are also women in their profession and leadership positions, And I think it's quite common where it's as you say, in our part of the world, it's not always easy to be managing men, right, as a woman in the workplace. What has helped in terms of breaking through and just commanding that respect? I mean, not every one of us would be studying 6 different degrees to prove ourselves. So, but as a day-to-day function, is there an outlook or a style of management that you take?
Um, I think I'm a good listener, right? I don't impose my views on others, and I try to get everyone to express themselves, have an opinion,
Right.
and then try to find a balance and make decision. But when I make a decision and that we're going to do something, I would follow it through to the end. I don't leave it halfway. And in a way, it's kind of impressive of my men colleagues, because it doesn't matter whether we're going to achieve it or not, successful or not, but we have to see it until the end. Right? So if I start a project, I want to know, I don't want to leave it halfway. I want to know if it can go through to the end or not. It's a yes or no. You don't, and so that is something that I think they respect me for. And even though I listen a lot, but I'm quite decisive in the sense that usually they think women are indecisive, right? Women can't decide. I think that's one of the sort of the criticism from men to women, that we are as a creature not very decisive. And I think that is something that I am not. I try to be very decisive at work. There are certain times when I'm undecisive. For instance, where to eat. To wear. Okay, that's when my real feminine self come out. But at work, I'm very decisive.
Right, right. I think you've nailed it there when you said, that balance, I think like yin and yang, right? That balance between being a good listener and at the same time being decisive. And that sort of would that sort of coins your leadership style.
Everything starts with money. Bakong is actually a system that allow different banks, mobile application, to speak to each other. I don't think I would have the courage to get out of this marriage if I weren't financially independent. That it's very important that you remain active professionally, that you have your own earnings, because anything can happen. I was in this marriage for 20 years. Who would have thought that? Even me, I wouldn't have thought that I would get out of this. Right, but it happens, and thanks God, I was financially dependent enough to make that decision of walking away and build a new life. But if you are entirely dependent on your husband or your counterpart, then it will be very difficult for you to walk out. And that is the beauty of working women, is that of course you have to do your work, but when you're home, you have to be home, right? When you're with them, you have to be with them and not away on your phone. Yeah, being present doesn't mean to be physically present, right? Being present means that they can come to you anytime they need you, and they can come to you, a phone call, right? It's being present. These kids are just sent to me, just like my kids who are sent to me in my womb. These are my kids sent to the wrong womb. That's all. Think of me as a divorcee. For me in particular, they'll say, oh, see, she's successful professionally, but she's done so poorly personally and at home. My ex-husband was not physically abusive. I don't think he cheated on me. He wasn't a drinker, he wasn't a gambler, but the distance was building in such a way that we were living our own life. I really didn't care what he was doing. He didn't care what I was doing. I'm finally happy being all by myself, single with the kids and all this. So yeah, I'm having the time of my life right now.
Guys, ladies, give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I am Polin, and I'll see you again in the next Real Chats episode. Bye for now.